With the roadmap released back at the 8th anniversary, we know that Chapter 35 in March is a license killer only chapter. I thought that it would be interesting to speculate which properties are most likely for that chapter, as well as some of the lesser known licenses that I think have a good chance of coming to the game in the near future. To do this accurately, I will be judging each license off the following criteria. Is the IP iconic? Is there proof that Behaviour wants this IP? Does it fit into the DBD universe? And is the license easily obtainable? Before we get into the thick of things, I would like to say that this video is purely speculation and my own opinion, so nothing is confirmed or any new information unless Behaviour decides to reveal this chapter 6 months in advance, so take rumours or leaks covered with a grain of salt. Let's start with some of the big hitters in the license game, and there's no better place to start than Jason Voorhees. Jason is obviously iconic, and devs have spoken about desire to bring him into DBD before, with Matthew Cote in particular saying Jason has an open invitation to come into the game anytime, and if they had a decent shot at getting him, they would definitely take it. Jason will complete the Rushmore of slashers in DBD, and he definitely fits in theme and tone into the game seamlessly. The elephant in the room, however, is actually getting him in the game part. For those who don't know the rights to Jason and Friday the 13th, there was a legal dispute between Victor Miller and Horror Inc., which has been resolved very recently. This may sound promising news, but the problem is that Victor Miller owns one version and Horror Inc. owns the one that Behaviour would want to license. So unless both parties can agree to let Behaviour have whatever aspects of this license, Jason will only be available as a certain version, probably without Camp Crystal Lake or any survivors or skins unless they can come to terms. This obviously suits a paragraph, which would be chapter 35, but this is arguably the biggest license that is still out there for the game to have to come into it, and I don't think that Behaviour would want to miss out on a full chapter potential at this time, especially adding it right before a FNAF chapter. Swiftly moving on, let's talk about Pennywise, the dancing clown, from the famous It franchise created and owned by Stephen King. Now Pennywise, like Jason, has been wanted by the community since DBD came out, and he ticks all the boxes. Pennywise is an easily recognisable and iconic character in the horror genre, and when asked 5 years ago, Matthew Cote openly said that they did try and get the license, but the license holders at the time were not willing to discuss anything. Cote has since been interviewed. When he was asked about his dream license to come into the game, he also answered Pennywise. So the person who is in charge of partnerships at Behaviour wants Pennywise. That is basically confirmed. When thinking about whether Pennywise fits into DBD, the answer is obviously yes. Thematically and tonally speaking, fits perfectly. A killer clown who terrorizes a small town called Derry would fit perfectly in the game, and we already have sort of a clown, and I'm sure they could make a cool power for him. However, as is the case with Jason, it is a very difficult franchise to obtain for a few reasons. Firstly, Stephen King had the rights reverted back to him in late 2022 from Warner Bros, so any deal would have to be done now with his approval. King himself has spoken in the past about not being a massive fan of video games and does not generally collaborate his IPs except to bring them to life through film. Behaviour would have to really pitch the idea to King and convince him of the benefits of a deal like this, as he is someone who is very cautious with third-party collabs with any of his properties. I'm sure Behaviour would also want a full chapter with a map, maybe like the Derry sewers and some survivors from the Losers Club for a full Pennywise release. And this is sort of like the Jason situation, a license that is probably the second biggest after Jason that we still don't have, and would be sort of too big to not have a full chapter for it. Candyman has always been hotly discussed whenever a licensed chapter is expected, and unfortunately has yet to enter DBD, and I think it will remain that way, at least when we are talking about chapter 35. Yes, he is iconic, always on the satisfaction surveys, and is one of the most wanted characters in the community, but Candyman, the IP, is now owned by Amazon after they bought out MGM. Now, nobody can predict Amazon's willingness for any collabs, as Amazon is such a huge company with a lot of different revenue streams, it doesn't appear to me that I think that a collab with Behaviour in a video game would be at the top of their list. If Candyman was owned by a smaller independent company, it would make a lot of sense for both the license holder and Behaviour, but as one of the largest companies in the world, it doesn't appear something that would be high on their to-do list, especially with this franchise that Amazon would probably, if I was to take a stab in the dark here, would probably want to do sort of more media, more sort of films, maybe a remake or something, as that would generate way more money than just a video game likeness collaboration. Slender Man is one of DBD fans' most popular horror franchises, with a high demand on coming into the game at some point. Slender Man is inarguably iconic and will certainly be on the shortlist at Behaviour for licensed collab. It is a little bit more tricky and less of a seamless fit like Jason or Pennywise, thematically or tonally, but Behaviour have proved they can work around that through the designs of Pinhead and Chucky, so I'm sure they can make a Slender Man work if they wanted to. The problem with almost all of these big licenses is the openness of the holder to collaborations, and Slender Man is owned by Blue Isle Studios, who seem reluctant to give this license out. There is very little of Slender Man in any other third-party properties, whether that be games or anything else. On the top of my head, I don't think I've seen any sort of Slender Man being licensed into video games as a playable character. He's definitely not in Fortnite or other games that many people would know. So it appears that this is just another company or license holder that appears to be very protective over its IP, and another one like Stephen King Pennywise situation that Behaviour would probably have to pitch very convincingly to make sure that the license would be able to come into the game. Never say never though, as if there's enough hype for something, there is a way. Where there is a will, there is definitely a way, and as we've seen in the past through Stranger Things coming back and the community nagging DBD and Netflix, that allowed us to get that license back. So if people were to constantly go on and on about Slender Man or Pennywise or Jason or any one of these in the comments of their things, I'm sure that this would be a way to make a collaboration happen. Now that we've discussed the big licenses, let's discuss a few of the more niche properties I think have a realistic chance of coming as Chapter 35. Megan is a very recent horror IP created by Blumhouse and James Wan, and I think it has a good chance of being Chapter 35. Here's why. Behaviour have aligned with Blumhouse for the DBD movie, so there's a connection already established there to James Wan, who also said in an interview when asked about whether he'd like to see Megan in video games or VR, that he would love to see a little Megan running around in DBD one day. So that right there shows a clear indication from the license holder wanting to have their IP in the game, and there's already sort of an easy contact. It's as simple as just picking up the phone to James Wan, and that deal could probably be done in a matter of minutes. Megan was also on the most recent satisfaction survey, so that shows that the interest is reciprocated by Behaviour for a licensed collaboration. This is probably the easiest IP in terms of actually getting licensed into the game out of any IP that is out there that is already not in the game. And Behaviour would probably get a lot of creative freedom with this due to the excellent relationship with Blumhouse and James Wan, which is something that the devs greatly value when it comes to their chapter releases. The only real problem is the IP is so new, it's a very fresh sort of IP. It doesn't have the same appeal or sort of backstory and history that others do. Even like a franchise like FNAF, which has been recently confirmed, that's, over a decade old. It has multiple games, it has a movie, it has loads of other things to it. Megan is just, very new. I feel like the story of that needs to be built up a little bit more before it would be valued and as good as it could be in DBD. But in terms of licensing, as I said, I think this is the easiest one to get, and I wouldn't be surprised if Behaviour just quickly got this in the game. Bioshock is the other niche license I realistically see coming to the game as a paragraph chapter, as it has an interesting villain in the Big Daddy and would be fine without a map or a survivor. There is also interest from Behaviour as it has consistently been on the satisfaction surveys, and while being a lesser known license, it does have a good appeal to the DBD community. When I sort of look online on Twitter and Reddit and stuff, people generally seem to like Bioshock, and I'm sure that the devs and community managers are aware of that. The only reason that I would struggle to sort of put it as a strong favourite for Chapter 35 and coming to DBD generally is sort of the fit. It's a type of killer that is quite unique to itself, and I must admit I'm not the most familiar with Bioshock, so maybe some people can educate me in the comments, but it doesn't look particularly scary or horror on first glance to me, which I think is important for a paragraph chapter. I've also heard rumours of Chapter 35 being The Grudge, and I will cover that in a future video. I don't have enough information to do those rumours or potential leaks justice at the moment, which is why we're not covering it today if anyone wondered, but we'll get to that further down the road. Finally, onto my front runner for Chapter 35, and it is of course The Predator. Predator is a big license that has always been on the surveys, it's always mentioned by the community as an IP that would be welcome into DBD, and that hype has since increased since we got Alien last year, as both Predator and Alien are owned by 20th Century Studios. There was also a Grid Xenomorph skin, which is from Aliens vs Predator, that was implemented into DBD. And with all of this knowledge, this is the one license that feels like a matter of when we get it and not if, as there is a clear good relationship between DBD and 20th Century Studios. With the amount of content that we've got so far, I mean, within the last month we got a Rain skin from the new Alien Romulus movie, and unlike Jason and Pennywise, I'm sure that if Behaviour want Predator, they can sort of have him anytime. It just depends whether they think they can do the character justice at this moment in time. Predator also does work well as a paragraph, even though many would like to see Dutch as a survivor and a jungle map. I'm not sure Behaviour would want another jungle map after Tober Landings. I saw, even though Tober Landing is meant to be sort of an alien map, it is sort of this alien jungle map, and I'm not sure that a jungle map is sort of the best thing for DBD anyway. There's too much clutter and crap just on the map everywhere. It's important to keep in mind as well that Terminator is another license that's been on satisfaction surveys and is wanted in this game, and having Dutch as a survivor would probably complicate that ever coming into the game. So I can see sort of a world where Behaviour just get Predator as a paragraph and then they get Terminator as well into the game. All in all though, Predator just ticks all of the boxes and makes a lot of sense to me whenever it's confirmed a licensed chapter is on the way. And frankly, I'm surprised it's not already in DBD. Out of all of the big licenses, Predator is probably by far the most easiest to actually license. I hope you enjoyed this speculation, and let me know in the comments who you want for Chapter 35 and who you think is the most realistic. Give me your top 3 options.